Final Fantasy's monks are renowned for their strength, their vitality, and for their love of fisting. But who is the best one? Well, to answer that question, let's glove up and take a journey through the ages of Final Fantasy, starting with the handsy monster who started it all, the monk from Final Fantasy I. And let's be real, we are starting off in the land of basic boxers. The whole gimmick of the monk, as is the case in many of these games, is nothing. No, that's it. They don't like weapons, they can't use shields, and their armor selection is basically like bracelets and vests. And if I don't say that in the other sections of this video, it's just because that's how it works for most monks in these games. Although I guess the Master Monk in this game can equip the ultimate weapon sword, but I don't know, it feels like someone else could use that better. And funny enough, the monk does about the same amount of damage shoving his hand up your... But ultimately, while this monk's stats are great, they don't get any special tools like monks in later games to help him do extra damage. All they do is punch, just like the monk in Final Fantasy III. Similarly, this guy can't use anything except bare hands and can't get any special abilities. But there is an unlockable upgrade to this class, the Black Belt. And unlike the base monk class, this class gets the focus ability. If used once, it can double the damage of the next attack. And if used twice, it triples the damage. Though if it's used a third time, it cancels everything out and just halves the character's HP. So don't do that. But in the pixel remaster of this game, the monk got another skill. Kick. It does somewhat weak damage to all enemies, which is honestly kind of mid. But it also does two other things. First, it ignores the damage penalty from being in the back row. This means your monk can reduce their incoming damage by staying in the back row while still being offensively viable. And more importantly, Kick can also apply the effect of the character's weapon to all enemies. This means that if your black belt is wielding the fairy claws, which cause instant death, it can apply instant death to all enemies. But unfortunately, the abilities end there. And given that monks, like the other physical classes, lack healing, it isn't too hard to replace them with someone else, particularly for bosses. And then there's Final Fantasy IV's Yang, who is just such a disappointment. Let's start with the good stuff though. He has a great HP stat, he has a great strength stat, and he also gets the focus ability. And just for fun, in a couple of the remasters of the game, the focus ability gets a cool upgrade. If you equip the discipline armband, the focus command becomes the deadly command, which should remind you of Caucasian breed. The deadly command does the same thing as focus, except it triples his power with just one command. And by the way, if you've never heard of these abilities, that's probably because they were nixed from the SNES version of this game, which makes this a great time to say that I'm judging these characters at the peak of their power. So if there's a weaker version, I'm ignoring it. Tantacles cannot process multiple information streams in parallel. Shut up. But this brings us to a monk that I finally think is worth discussing, the monk class from Final Fantasy V. Because this game is an overture to an era of powered-up punchy pals. Kick and focus still exist and are largely unchanged, but this monk gets some nifty new abilities. Because first, this monk gets the chakra ability. This heals some HP and also heals the poison and dark statuses, which can be useful in a pinch, particularly since the skill costs 0 MP. However, its healing power is pretty minuscule, so if you're trying to keep your monk healthy, there are better ways to heal up, namely having someone else heal you. But in terms of the monk itself, its options are kind of limited. You could give them white mage abilities to augment their healing, or even chemist abilities, which are probably more useful given they can revive the entire party for free. And with the monk's high HP, there's a good chance that they'll be the last ones standing, and they really don't want much else in terms of secondary abilities. But most of the time, I would probably just let them punch stuff, which they do very well. Frankly though, they kind of fall off later in the game compared to other classes. The ninja can dual wield, which is something the knight can't do effectively with fists, and let me know in the comments if you want a video about the best ninjas in Final Fantasy. I know you do, I know. But the berserker can also just kind of wreck stuff at the expense of not being able to do anything but attack, and is also immune to confuse, which the monk is quite vulnerable to. So all in all, a great class, just not mind-blowing. But let's skip ahead a bit, because as you might have already guessed, our number one monk is is from Final Fantasy's Golden Age. But there is one monk who is completely garbage that I want to talk about first. Final Fantasy XIII Snow. But I don't want to talk about him for long, because while he does have some monk-like attributes, because he uses fists and stuff, he is ultimately kind of similar to the other characters in the game. Everyone ultimately just becomes interchangeable. He's the hot dog, you throw him down the hallway explodes, and game over. And if you love throwing hot dogs down hallways, you should subscribe. This is really stupid. Just subscribe. It really helps the channel, guys. Thank you. But sadly, Snow is the last monk chronologically. That is, if we're only talking about the mainline series, and you guys know I love to talk about tactics in these videos. And it's in the tactics spin-offs that monks really begin to shine. Final Fantasy Tactics reinvents the monk. As you might expect, monks innately have the bare hands ability, giving them a leg up in slap fights. And they also gain the chakra ability, restoring HP and some statuses. Chakra is different in Tactics though. It also restores a small amount of magic points, which is cool, even though monks' magic stats are in the garbage. But this game decided that monks deserved even more tools. Offensively, they have a bunch of nasty area of effect attacks, most notably Cyclone, which attacks all enemies in a circle, and Shockwave, which can hit an enemy up to 8 spaces away and deal earth damage. And even better, the monk automatically gets the revive ability, allowing them to resurrect allies at 0 cost. But it only gets better, because as a passive ability, the monk in this game can learn dual wield. This will allow their fists to strike twice, dealing a ton of damage with very little investment. But this presents a problem. Getting to the ninja class requires a huge grind. If you've already unlocked that class by leveling up the necessary jobs, it's almost always better to stay there and just equip the monk's abilities as opposed to equipping the ninja abilities on the monk. And this is because ninjas have faster speed growth. And if you truly want to do the most damage with slap fights possible, you can just give your ninja the barehanded ability. And sure, you'll do less damage per hit, but you'll be able to move more often, ultimately increasing damage. But vacillating back to the monk's strengths, the bare hands ability and the attack up ability, both of which the monk has innately, allow it to be one of the best thieves in the game. And I talked about that more in detail in another video, the best thieves in Final Fantasy video, which I will link in the Discridly-do. Check it out after this one. In Final Fantasy Tactics Advance though, the monk class, actually known as the White Monk, has similarly varied abilities. However, it's nowhere near as good as the monk in the original Tactics because of 2 problems. The first is that they're only available on one of 5 available races in the game, the Banga, and this really kneecaps the class. But to be fair, this is one of the base classes in the game, so it's sort of supposed to be like that. You need to level up the White Monk to access more advanced classes, but for that reason, meh. But Final Fantasy Tactics VIII flips that on its head. Yes, the White Monk still exists, but we're actually going to talk about its upgrade, the Master Monk. Now, this class is still limited to only Bangas, but it does get some clutch upgrades. Okay, but what if they actually gave the Master Monk a clutch and it was like, I own 51% of this company, Mr. DeMille, and I'm gonna punch in your face with my purse. So stupid. Okay, moving on. Anyway, the monk gets one pretty great skill that doesn't exist in any other Final Fantasy, I think. Anyway, the ability is cross counter. When the Master Monk uses cross counter on a unit with counter, the counter skill backfires. The Master Monk just says, fuck you, you don't know shit about counters, and just wrecks their shit. That means you can use your Master Monk as a tactical unit to eliminate all units that have the counter skill. But here's the rub. Many units just don't have the counter skill. And yes, the Master Monk is pretty powerful regardless, but this class, sadly for the theme of this video, is actually pretty balanced, which means the Tactics VIII Monk, along with all the others from Tactics, is not going to be the best in the series. Oh, and the Monk in Final Fantasy XII is also not going to be it, but I'll be brief with this one. The Monk is a strong choice, but this game is all about synergy. In Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age, every character gets 2 classes, and it's important to choose 2 classes that complement each other, and the Monk in in Final Fantasy XII gets a ton of strength modification, but that strength is not best used on the monk itself, or at least not on its fisting potential. It's actually best used to strengthen attacks from other classes, and this is because weapons in Zodiac Age are ridiculously powerful. The best weapons in this game are just so much stronger than fists. And while you might lose some damage, it feels like, to me, it's probably better to choose a weapon-wielding class and make the secondary class something like a time mage so you can boost yourself. But honestly, this is the game where I'm probably least familiar with the mechanics. Okay, that's a lie. The MMOs are where I'm least familiar with the mechanics, and you guys should leave me a comment telling me about both Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy XI and XIV, and tell me if the monk class is busted in those games. I'm not 100% sure, but I'd love to hear what you think about it. The power of monks is clearly greatest in the PS1 era. But before we get there, let's talk about a SNES monk. Although the game was also re-released on the PS1, so whatever. It's Sabin from Final Fantasy VI. Even though he's not the best monk, he is my favorite monk in the entire series. Because not only is he strong, but he also has really hot arms and chesticles. Hot mama, look at those! Sabin gets a really cool ability though that, while not broken, definitely added to his power, and even more importantly, made Final Fantasy VI a lot more fun to play: Blitz. By inputting a button combo, Sabin can unleash a strong ability. Of note, the Fire Dance Blitz is really useful in the early game, doing strong fire damage to all enemies and trivializing many battles. Sabin's Chakra Blitz also lets him multitask, healing HP to all party members and curing some status effects for free. And of course, my favorite is Suplex, which you can use to literally lift up and smash a train. Sorry, Selfie. But what makes him less effective than other monks is magic. And technically, it doesn't make him less effective. He, like everyone else, can equip espers, basically dead animal friends, and those espers can teach every single magic spell in the game. And these spells ultimately can do more damage than he can with his blitzes, particularly if you raise his magic stat as he levels. And for this reason, his monk skills basically take a back seat once you can cast powerful spells. But worse for him is that his magic stat is kind of in the garbage compared to most of the other characters in the game. So why even bother using him? Well, I know why I'm gonna use him. I want to touch those. Beneath the veneer of Final Fantasy IX, though, lies a monk who is definitely worth using: the Flaming Amarant. And this game did not hold back on his power level. Right out of the box, his toolkit gives him an interesting niche, because he's not only the monk of this game, he's also the ninja. He can deal massive damage by throwing your hoarded knickknacks at your foes. But more to the tune of actual monk things, his flare skills are actually quite broken, particularly his support skills. His chakra skill, just like the one in Tactics, restores HP and MP. But unlike the monk in Tactics, he can use this skill on both himself and his allies. He also gains the incredibly valuable aura skill, which bestows auto life and regen on an ally. And maybe you're thinking that casting these both on one ally isn't that broken. And you're right. But Amarant's trance fixes that, because when he enters trance, which is triggered by getting attacked by enemies, all of his single target skills become multi-target. So now you can cast auto life and regen on all of your party members at the same time, ensuring that a one-shot is no issue. Or you can restore their health and magic points along with Amarant's, giving them a chance to attack again. And if you just want to wreck some opponents, you can also use his No Mercy skill to deal massive non-elemental damage to all enemies. Or even better, his Spare Change ability. This does damage based on the amount of gil the party has and Amarant's level, but in a strange twist of fate, it does more damage when the party has less gil, which is ironic given the state of the United States right now. Go capitalism. But Final Fantasy's Tifa has a leg up on him, because everyone in Final Fantasy VII can learn every spell, get massive stat boosts from materia, and just get extremely broken. But if you play Tifa correctly, she has a ton of potential to blow through enemies. As the monk, she uses her fists as weapons, and her limit break does something no one else's can. Rather than using just one attack, Tifa's ultimate limit break just uses all of her limit breaks in succession. At her best, this could mean wrecking everything in sight. The disadvantage advantage, though, beyond the fact that it's a limit break and you can't just use it over and over in rapid succession, is that its targeting is random. Each hit slays only a single enemy, and in cases where you need to hit everything at once or you want to target someone specific, you just can't. And furthermore, both she and Amarant are just kind of outclassed by their comrades. Why have Amarant heal when Garnet or Eiko can do it? Why have Amarant deal damage when he maxes out at 9,999 and Vivi or Eiko can hit for double that in a single turn? Why have Tifa hit 7 times when Cloud's Omni Slash or Knights of the Round can double that? Is there someone who can go beyond? Is there someone better? Final Fantasy VIII Zell is, without a doubt, the best monk in all of Final Fantasy. But why? Well, once you max out all of his stats with the Junction system, which allows you to basically equip Magicka's weapons and armor, he has the tools to deal essentially infinite damage. His Limit Break duel is the most powerful in the game, which might come as a surprise to those of you who know how powerful Squall's ultimate Limit Break, Lionheart, is. And the reason is that Squall's Limit Break has an actual cap on its damage, but Zell's doesn't. Duel requires the player to input button commands to deal damage, and if you're fast enough, his Limit Break literally won't end. And even better, to activate his Limit Break, all you have to do is make sure he's at low health. Then he can spam it over and over and over, which I did when I beat the game with no healing to Scriddly. Zell can do enough damage to defeat even Omega Weapon, the game's ultimate super boss, in one turn. Is it hard to do? Yes. Is it worth it though? Yes. Just like it's worth it for you to click this playlist and watch all of these silly comparative videos. Or you could click this playlist to watch all of my Final Fantasy videos. Don't forget, no glove, no love. Follow me on social media, and bye-bye.